Imagine a sand apocalypse where everything in sight is buried beneath endless dunes. Giant monsters lurk just below the surface, and desperate survivors fight over the last scraps of resources. In this ruined, sandy hellscape, there is only one boy who can control the very earth around him. Can you even imagine what he's capable of? The entire world is in his hands, and his potential is truly limitless. Here is how it all began 100 years ago. A mysterious beam of light struck Earth and consumed everything on the planet, turning our blue marble into a giant ball of sand. What little was left of humanity built a stronghold of their own called Dayan. Our protagonist is a miserable peasant caught in the crosshairs of a few bastards who take joy in tormenting others. But our boy ain't no bitch, he responds back in kind. Recalling his past, he realized he'd never actually killed a person until a small accident occurred where a guy tried to steal his gear, and ended up dead. In this world, awakeners are treated like literal gods. The thought that he had killed someone connected to Li Ji Riam, a powerful awakener, absolutely terrified him. This same bastard remained unaffected by the kid's punch, slamming him aside, and using his powers to teach the rat a lesson. Fortunately, an accident caused their vehicle to flip over, injuring the thug in the process. With the driver on the brink of death, he revealed they were about to be swallowed whole by a Godzilla-sized sandworm. He had to cling on for dear life, knowing his time had come. He lamented being a weakling, thinking that if only he were stronger, things would be different. The sandworm swallowed him whole, but shockingly, the boy didn't die. Finding himself alive inside the creature's gut, this man decided to become the next Paul Atreides. In that moment, he saw everything the destroyed structures of humanity came flooding into his senses, showing him the marvelous planet that used to be. Right then, he awakened his ability for the first time and instinctively chanted, "Sand Blaster," piercing a shot straight through the creature's side. Now that he finally had the power to survive, he dared to defy the odds, vowing to use the sand to conquer the impossible. He can feel every tiny beat of his heart. It's as if his body is charged with incredible energy. Realizing this is the process of awakening, he clenches his fist. Meanwhile, we get this insane scene reminiscent of Dune as the sandworm prepares to devour the tiny human. The creature reaches out to swallow him, while Dan stands there with balls of titanium, refusing to back down. Shockingly, some dude intrudes to save his life, complaining that the kid is in his way. The man throws Zian through the air, causing him to hit the ground with a heavy crash. My guy spits out sand, questioning how the hell this random dude managed to teleport like Minute and Namcase out of the blue. But the moment he looks back up, he's terrified to witness the man driving a blade into the sandworm's neck, sending tar like blood spraying everywhere. The man teases the creature for making him climb so high, wondering if he should send it all the way back down. Preparing his move, he drives a kick straight into the sword, pushing the monster to its death. Our boy is stunned. The fact that someone as powerful as this random guy managed to take out a sandworm is no easy feat. This was actually Jian's first encounter with such a beast, and before he could even process it, a blue-haired baddie approached him. She revealed that the man was Captain Jan Yunbium, being flashy as usual. Jian has absolutely no idea how these guys are moving so fast, it's like they were popping out of thin air. While the girl is busy complimenting her captain's epic skills, one look at her is enough to realize she is also immensely powerful. More importantly, the kid is confused about why his body has started to freeze up. Yunbium expresses that a sandworm isn't even a tough opponent for him, then addresses a woman named Jaisal. The captain turns back to find the two of them mingling. Jaisal is playful yet obedient to her captain, having a hell of a time dragging Zian around like a rag doll. In an instant, she overpowers our guy, and pins him down, and I bet a lot of us would love to switch positions with him right now. Jaisal playfully tries to guess the guy's rank and abilities, questioning what method she should use to find out. But then, she notices something strange. Zian doesn't actually seem to be an awakener at all. Pinned to the ground, our boy can't believe what he's hearing. Jaisal continues to mess with his arm, while telling the captain that the kid doesn't have a rank insignia. Diane is confused, thinking the girl might be blind, because every awakener is supposed to have a mar. Watching the scene from a nearby car, another teammate hollers at them to hurry up. Jaisal asks the captain for input, explaining that it would be weird to just leave the fellow here to die. I mean, our boy has complaints of his own. Isn't this the same girl who nearly snapped his arm? Yunbium stares the kid down, meeting him eye to eye, before instructing Jaisal to throw him in the back since he seemed to be headed toward the mine anyway. In the next scene, we see their rugged ride filled with a rowdy group. Yunbium's team isn't exactly the peaceful type. They were causing a massive commotion. Meanwhile, our boy is pushed to the back, and tied up like luggage. He listens to their chatter until sand begins to drift into the vehicle. In reality, it's sand manipulating the flow of the sand itself, confirming he has indeed awakened his powers. At the same time, he doesn't understand why no one can see his rank insignia. Taking a look at it himself, he finds the mark strange too. The color looks orange, but it actually matches the exact shade of the sand. The light of a mark usually suggests an awakener's classification. In other words, magic types typically have a blue classification, while combat maniacs have a red orientation. Though there has been info about other kinds of awakeners, it's the first time Dian has ever heard of someone manipulating sand. Even as he does it effortlessly, he realizes his power is one of a kind. Unfortunately, he also sees that he's in Frank, but the silver lining is his infinite potential, allowing him to adapt just like the desert. Our boy is happy with what he's got, hoping to hide his powers until the time is right. Eventually, this man will be able to control the entire desert according to his will and, by extension, dominate the planet, which makes me wonder if bro is a hero or a villain at this point. Anyway, they arrive at the gorgeous magic crystal mine. Ian sees a checkpoint and mutters that things appear normal. One guy orders him to follow along without barking, so the kid has no choice but to be led away. Watching from a distance, Jessel and Young Biam discuss how strange they feel about the kid. The fact that he's the only survivor could be chalked up to luck, but the captain rejects that idea. You see, back when he was looking around, he saw the gaping hole in the sandworm's side, meaning the kid was definitely involved. It's a shame Young Biam didn't even ask for the boy's name, because he feels they are destined to cross paths again. In the next scene, we get a bit of a twist. Average mines are supposed to be full of dark tunnels, but here, people are bustling around and enjoying festivities. Ian didn't anticipate this at all. The guy handling him taunts him, saying he's going to call the supervisor soon, and the kid better stay put. Our boy isn't happy about being left alone in a place like this, especially while the guy questions if he should do him a favor by putting a bullet in his head. The guard leaves, bickering to himself, allowing the kid to do whatever he wants, since it won't matter anyway. That conversation aside, Ian understands he needs to eat something. Since he's starving, he scans the area, finding a shop to fulfill his needs at that moment. Searching for a shop to fulfill his needs, Ian notices a poster on the wall advocating for laborers to light up the city. As he settles in, the seller hands him a drink and asks if he finds the movement inspiring. Ian notices the man's hands are a mess of scars, a physical testament to a brutal life. The old man begins expressing how the city's real energy source isn't actually mana stones. Ian, having no clue where this conversation is headed, asks what the real source is. Pointing directly at the boy, the man emphasizes that people like him, people like Ian, are the actual fuel. They are constantly instructed to do whatever is demanded, and there are always replacements ready to fill the gap when they break. To the elite, it's a magnificent and endless energy source. Our boy is immediately annoyed that this dude is already roasting the absolute crap out of him upon their very first encounter. He barks back, telling the old geezer he should worry more about his own numbered days on the planet. The old man just ushers the kid to understand that at his age, everything seems like a game. Somehow, he even knows about Jian's descent into the sandworm's body, which stuns the boy even more. The old geezer continues to berate him, sharing how a kid like him is destined to end up in a sandworm's belly soon anyway, as this isn't a place for some random kid to hide. Jian defends himself, claiming he's just here to make money, while the boomer points to the back of the shop, hoping to enlighten the boy with something eye-opening. He looks, but all he sees is a pile of junk. He totally misses the point. The seller explains that he collected all that stuff one by one, and then he drops the bombshell. Those are actually the remains of everyone who came here before him, people who met the exact same reality the kid is about to face. Everyone here tries to resist the temptation of heading into the mines, but mana stones are just that addictive. Afraid of the worst death imaginable, these newbies try to sell everything they own just to survive, holding on to dear life as they effectively sell off parts of their souls. In the end, none of it matters. Nothing gets better for them, and whatever they manage to gather eventually slips away. They all meet the same fate. The old man finds it easier to just tell people straight up that the mine will consume them. This bastard has the audacity to state that rats like Jian, and those who came before him, won't even leave a name behind. He even claims he's ecstatic to see what remains of the kid after his death. Ignoring the rant with pure frustration, Ian asks for the price of his drink. The old geezer asks for tinsel, an amount so ridiculous that Jian screams at him. Apparently, every resource here costs a fortune. Even the skewer he ate earlier was no different. Ian talks down on the quality of the meat before revealing he doesn't even have the kind of money the man is asking for. While he's busy justifying himself and arguing that they were trying to loot him, he doesn't notice that all the other butchers and workers in the area are drawing weapons to cut him down. Yet, they breathe it merciless. Ian goes on and on about how he won't pay a single penny, only for one bastard to come around and flank him from behind. The fear of death overwhelms our boy for a split second. The old man throws a riddle at the kid, asking how someone like him even runs a business in a place this shitty. The answer is simple: they are all corrupt. Ian looks back to see he is confronted by more than a dozen men, all lined up to cut his body to shreds. Acting like some kind of mafia boss, the old man amusingly asks what the kid is gonna do next. Ian roars that he has nothing to offer and that it's pointless to ask for that kind of money for a single drink. Maintaining the upper hand in the negotiation, the old man happily suggests a solution. He's eyeing the mana stone in Ian's pocket, believing it's a fitting repayment. Our boy is frightened by how fast rumors of his actions have spread. The scumbag continues to urge him to toss the stone over, promising he'll even pitch a fair price for it. Ian delivers a powerful refusal, expressing that he had to go through hell and back just to get that stone. He wants to talk things out, but it's clear his words mean nothing. In the next moment, a muscle-bound maniac grabs his head and slams it onto the table, even suggesting they just bury the brat now. Pissed off, Ian activates a sand blaster and boom. The guy's arm goes flying through the air. That's what you get for messing with the wrong guy. The severed arm lands in the hands of the other men who were ready to kill him. Refusing to negotiate further, Ian deploys spikes of sand, slaughtering every corrupt man in the zone. Well, that's what he thought was going to happen in his head. At least, that cool action sequence doesn't actually happen. Instead, we see Jian bleeding from his nose and spacing out, cursing his fate. In the end, Bro has to toss the stone over to the old geezer, giving him exactly what he wanted. The old man is impressed with the size of the stone, suggesting it's worth about 100 sol. Again, it's a ridiculous price, and Jian fires back that it's worth at least 300 based on its size. The old geezer has all the leverage, though, so he talks down to the kid once more, berating him for not becoming sandworm shit instead of coming here. After another table slam, Jian reaches his limit, intending to blast his way out. But even now, he knows he's not strong enough to do anything. Jian requests a suitable bonus in exchange for the stone. The corrupt old geezer is fine with that. He warns Jian to beware of pickpockets who are quick to steal anything. To play nice for their first deal, he suggests the kid can pick anything he wants from the pile of junk. Rummaging around, our boy doesn't really find anything useful. While he's sulking, the old man is intrigued by his behavior. The fact that the kid refuses to lose a single coin shows a level of pettiness that is uncommon in a zone like this. Jian plays around with some junk clown costumes before discovering something interesting, an item the boss even highlights as an interesting article. Our boy settles on a tiny hourglass as his bonus. As he's leaving, the boss teases him one last time for being so selective with literal trash. Before heading out, Jian asks for the old man's name, and he loudly announces himself as Klixi. Our boy burns that name into his memory, hoping their paths never cross again, though it sounds more like a direct threat. Klixi shows no fear, and returns to his business. In the next scene, the kid is busy inspecting the hourglass. Jian learns that it takes about 10 minutes for the sand to run out. Currently residing in his quarters, he takes a deep breath and focuses all his attention on the tube to test his abilities. He orders the sand inside to move at once, but to his shock, nothing happens. Pro humiliates himself by staring at his own empty reflection, confused that his powers aren't actually related to an awakening. His entire ability is a mystery, as he's never seen anyone use anything like it before. Strangely enough, Jian gets weird vibes from the junkyard. The fact that this hourglass was conveniently sitting there makes him think it was deliberately placed for him, as if it were calling out to him. Before he can wrap his head around these feelings, some imbecile kicks the door down, demanding to know if he's the new kid. Jian is immediately cursed at and berated for not being at the mine already. This guy, Anhole, clearly gives zero shits. Jian tries to put some respect on his own name by asking the dude to treat him nicely, only to get an uppercut straight to the face that launches him toward Kingdom Come. Mando gears up a second punch, shoving it deep into the kid's abdomen, and ordering him to shut the hell up. But that's not all. Jian gets stepped on like a piece of human meat just because he bruised this brute's ego. Manhwa calls him an unawakened loser with attitude issues, telling him that people like him are meant to lay low and take a beating just to stay alive. After satisfying his urge to beat a kid up, he orders Jian to follow him. Our boy gets up without chickening out. The first thing he says is that Manhwa is a psychopath, and that, no matter what happens, Jian will kill him someday. I love how Bro is already building a hit list that he's definitely gonna use later. Someday. I love how our boy is out here collecting a hit list that he's definitely gonna use to take everyone out. In the third sector of the mine entrance, Jian is brought to the main worksite and quickly suited up. He's told in advance that the costs for his food and gear will be docked from his pay, and that his primary goal is to collect milestones. At first, our boy thinks it's a simple enough task, but before he can fire off another question, his helmet is smashed open by Manhwa's pickaxe. This guy makes it crystal clear that he couldn't care less if the kid doesn't know how to swing a tool. He also tacks on the cost of the broken helmet to Jian's mounting debt. Manhwa then orders his subordinate to throw Jian into Chef Mill 972, which is notorious for being one of the absolute worst sectors in existence. Jian doesn't really give a damn anymore and simply obeys the orders, all while his asshole manager emphasizes that if he doesn't return with a mana stone, he'll be executed on the spot. Talk about having the world's worst job. Deep in this subterranean hellscape, even the subordinate explains that this is the most dangerous location they have. It doesn't help that Jian joined on the very day Manhwa lost all his money gambling, a fact that surprises our boy, as he didn't even realize a casino existed in this area. His new buddy explains that everything is available here, claiming it's no different from Neo's soul in that regard. Jian realizes that with clowns like this shitty manager running things, it's a miracle these businesses even stay afloat. Our boy is also worried about whether he can handle swinging a pickaxe all day, given his smooth skin and the fact that he bruises easily. However, his new friend assures him that he won't have any trouble getting hurt down there because, as it turns out, Not a single person sent into that tunnel has ever come back injured. Not even one. It's an ominous warning, but they eventually arrive at the designated tunnel anyway. Ian asks if he just needs to farm the amount of crystals and return, but the guy quickly cuts him off, revealing that he actually won't be returning at all. More than a dozen people have already vanished just by stepping foot in there. In fact, people are currently betting on whether or not he'll survive the next few minutes. No one even knows if the others died, but all this homeboy has to offer is a weak apology, and some fake gratitude for Zayn venturing into a place so dangerous that no normal human would touch it. The Ian shouts at him, realizing that everyone else sent here is likely dead. He demands answers, but the guy literally leaves him behind to die. Instead of letting that audacity shake him, it fuels our boy's rage to mine the absolute crap out of this place. He's pissed off that they sent him here to rot just because they were having a bad day. Unfortunately, on his very first swing, the pickaxe shatters and slips from his hand, bouncing helplessly into the darkness. Ian tries to reach for it while wondering what kind of hellscape he's even supposed to survive. He was too angry to notice before, but the mana in this part of the tunnel is extremely dense. It makes him wonder if the others simply couldn't feel it because they weren't awakened individuals. The density is so thick that it starts to overwhelm him the deeper he goes, confirming that a normal person would have experienced mana oversaturation by now. Searching for the source of the mana, Ian eventually finds his pickaxe, though the handle is completely sad. He's just happy to have found it, but right as he's feeling grateful for his luck, dude steps into a literal void. His eyes nearly pop out of his head as the abyss lures him in, stunning Ian with the sudden appearance of a portal. His helmet snaps to the side, landing right next to the broken pickaxe. This moment triggers a flashback to the boy's past, a truly miserable life. Everyone around him told him he was destined to die. As a little kid, he had to fight tooth and nail just to survive, getting beaten several times just because he wanted the basic luxury of a decent meal. Every time he had a dream, someone else quashed it. In the end, he even managed to kill someone. Consumed by fear and guilt, and thinking his life was over, the boy ran as fast as he could toward a life where he didn't have to worry about dying every single second. The memory of Lee Juryong's name haunts him as we cut back to Jian. He slowly wakes up from his knocked-out state after falling through the portal. Gathering himself, he stands up and immediately wonders why the air feels so scorching hot. After noticing the surrounding ash, he curses his fate. This little shortcut led him directly into a fiery, high-rank dungeon. A stone tumbles past Jian, and he grabs it, only to realize the thing is white-hot. Bro tosses it away immediately, cursing the damn thing. This confirms one thing: he's definitely not dreaming. On the bright side, people in Neo Soul already have experience preparing for dungeon descents. Sure, his hand is scorched right now, but he understands that this is volcanic ash. In other words, if Jian doesn't find a way out soon, he's cooked literally. Ripping a piece off his pants, he quickly bandages his mouth, reasoning that if this dungeon has an entrance, an exit must be around the corner. He suspects the exit is at the peak of the volcanic outburst, the highest point in the dungeon. Staying put means certain death, as the volcanic ash will eventually suffocate him. Since there are no monsters in sight, he decides this is his best chance to take the shortest route out. Armed with that confidence, he bolts at incredible speeds, blazing himself as the all-powerful Jian, the man who never gives up, no matter the hurdle. He talks a big game, but my guy barely survives a brush with literal lava. To make things worse, the terrain shatters beneath him, sending him plummeting. Ian only survives because he manages to catch a ledge, merely getting his ass burnt to a crisp. Brute forcing his way through, Bro declares that a little bit of lava won't scare him off. Again, he barely makes it out alive, panting after another near-death experience. Instead of fear, pure frustration engulfs him. All his anger is directed at that bastard Manhwa, the bitch who tossed him here like dead weight. Ian vows that he'll kill that dude with his bare hands once he makes it out alive. After managing to suppress his rage, he finds the conviction to survive no matter what. He's a fighter who refuses to stay down. From his current position, he only needs 4 more jumps to reach the highest point and escape certain death. Instead of overthinking every step, he intends to blitz forward with zero hesitation. After all, my guy has no intention of letting his life rot in a shitty dungeon like this. The words "I won't stop" become his mantra. But right when you start to have a sliver of hope for this kid, Godzilla's younger cousin explodes out of the lava to devour him. The creature successfully snaps him up in its mouth before splashing back into the bubbling magma. Interestingly, this giant alligator continues on like nothing happened, but its eyes quickly dart up toward a hanging cliff. Ian actually survived. He managed to leap to the other side, and is currently holding on for dear life using his powers. The silver lining to this brutal encounter is that it taught him he can manipulate volcanic ash to some extent, which is exactly what saved his life just now. He descends near the monster's snout, nearly passing out from the intense, suffocating heat. This dungeon is way too harsh. The environment itself is deadlier than the monsters inhabiting it. Our boy can feel his nose burning from the inside, making every breath a struggle. His consciousness begins to waver, and with the last flickers of light in his eyes, the thought of death crosses his mind for the millionth time. But Refusing to quit and channeling the ultimate spirit of David Goggins, the man stands back up. He reminds himself of his own words. His main motivation is that he hasn't even had a girlfriend yet, so dying here would be a total sin. I'm starting to think he's Denji's long-lost cousin from Chainsaw Man. And by the way, that ending for part 2 was ass. Anyway, Gian takes control of the volcanic ash, apologizing to his uncle in advance for the absolute chaos he's about to unleash. Suddenly, the giant monster erupts from the lava. As it gears up for its second attack, our boy retaliates to the best of his ability just to survive. Out of nowhere, a voice graces him, praising his unique ability. Nian is startled by the stranger, while the same voice expresses great interest in his sand manipulation ability. Right then, an old man descends to save his life, falling from the sky like a blessing sent from heaven. The old geezer grabs his sword right before his descent, completely stunning Xian. This man torpedoes down at immense speeds, crashing into the monster's flesh with a heavy blow. That single attack sends out shockwaves and alters the very course of the lava, spiraling debris in every direction and nearly annihilating Xian from the impact. Our boy is shivering from the mere force of that impact, which literally causes his eardrums to burst while knocking his senses out. Glancing ahead to find the old man and check the state of the monster, Ian discovers that the creature has been deced clean in half. This foreign feeling is completely new to him. The man standing before him isn't just some ordinary, strong awakener. This guy is categorically in a different league, like he's the Gojo of this universe. The guy casually takes another step, and each footfall smashes the ground before him. Ian is dead lost just witnessing his glory, while the awakener asks for the kid's name. Since the boy is too stunned to speak, the man decides to create a dilemma for him, suggesting that if he doesn't answer by the count of 3, bad things will happen. The countdown starts with the old man gearing up in preparation, and the moment he hits 1, he's already looming over the boy like a ghost from hell. In the end, he doesn't actually do anything to Xian, instead questioning why the kid looks so geeked out. In reality, our boy can barely hear the man's voice since his eardrums just got rammed. His list of injuries is piling up, but the old man doesn't seem to understand that part. The awakener draws his sword, thinking he should simply cut the boy down if he refuses to talk. The boy regains his hearing and panics, confirming he has no idea what's going on and begging for mercy. This is good news to the awakener, who's happy to know the kid isn't a lost cause. He reiterates his question and asks for the boy's name, who exclaims that it's Xian. This guy is so hilarious. He judges our boy for having such a pathetic name, making Xian wonder what kind of name this dude even has to be acting so sigma. At that moment, this overpowered old geezer obliterates a boulder, announcing that his name is Deedon. Even though he introduced himself, our boy still has no idea what the hell this old man is doing right now. The awakener is confused and asks the boy to clarify, so Xian roars that he's being called a dumbass and threatened for no reason. Though he feels grateful for having his life saved, he still doesn't get why he deserves such harsh treatment. Calling him a dumbass once more, Deedon explains that the boy has been caught in some kind of trap. Ignoring the disrespect, Deedon asks for the details, and learns that a snare is actually a phenomenon that occurs when a dungeon's mana is oversaturated. To prevent a collapse, the dungeon creates another entrance point, leaking mana through that gap. In other words, it draws in surrounding living creatures in the same manner that is what a snare is. Deedon emphasizes that most people never get the chance to experience this, so the boy's luck has to be the worst of the worst. This adds more fuel to the fire that Xian should probably murder Manhwa's bitch ass. The awakener calls him a dumbass once more, much to the boy's displeasure. Making a face, Deedon demonstrates exactly why the boy is a dumbass, urging him to focus his mana into his eyes. Deedon doesn't get what he means until he actually tries it, condensing mana into his eyes. The idea is to use mana to see, helping the boy perceive things he's never seen before. He's terrified of what lies ahead, while Deedon is glad the kid can finally understand what he's dealing with. The magic beast he sought is a creature with stealth abilities, making light work of its prey before they even know what hit them. Just like that, our boy was about to get swallowed. The creature had been right in front of him this entire time, and yet Xian couldn't detect even a trace of danger. By the way, earlier when he cut down that boulder, Deedon was actually slicing through this second monster. Without the old man's help, our boy would have died without even knowing what hit him. That makes it twice now that this man has saved his life, begging the question, just how powerful is he? In an effort to satisfy his curiosity, the boy desperately asks for Deedon's real identity, only for the man to call him a dumbass again, scolding him that he's just good old Deedon. Deedon shouts at the overpowered old geezer, asking how he got this strong. When he questions where they even are, Deedon tells him they are inside a dungeon. The old man casually calls the scorching wasteland his hunting ground and tells the boy to pay close attention, since he is about to show him what he can really do. The worn-out-looking man pulls out his sword and shouts, "Pray on." The moment he does, shockwaves spread through the area, forcing Xian to cover his ears. At first, Xian has no idea what is going on, but when he looks around, he realizes the dungeon is actually crowded with flamebird-like monsters swarming everywhere. Dieden looks excited at the sight of the fight and tells our boy that he is on his own now and needs to figure out how to survive. Xian is thrown into a life or death situation and starts cursing the old man out. He looks around, trying to think of anything he can do, but it becomes clear that he is completely surrounded and has nowhere to go. The monsters move far too fast for him to track properly or even dodge in time. They keep landing small attacks on him, tearing his clothes apart bit by bit. Xian cannot even find a way to escape, and he starts wondering why the creatures keep targeting his left side over and over again. He looks up and desperately tries to shoot sand at the flying beasts, but they easily avoid his attacks and respond with multiple strikes of their own. Our boy feels completely useless compared to the old geezer. He tries to protect his pretty face by raising his arms as attacks keep coming at him from every direction. Xian realizes that he is going to die soon if he keeps goofing around without doing anything. He feels pathetic thinking that he might die even after being saved twice by the old man. At that moment, he recalls the scene when the old-timer appeared in front of him once again and called out to him. Xian tries to hear what Dieden is saying, but his ears are ringing badly, and he cannot listen properly. He recalls how the old man told him to see through Manhwa instead of relying on his eyes. Even while calling himself a pathetic loser, he refuses to give up and starts searching for a way to sense the enemies that his vision cannot track. He slowly gathers mana into his eyes and works on increasing its purity step by step. He focuses hard and tries to feel the flow of mana just like the old man suggested, and this time it finally works, as he begins to sense the magic power inside the beasts. Now he can track them, and the moment their mana comes within range, he strikes at the closest point possible, finally taking down the two lava birds that were targeting him. Meanwhile, the old geezer is busy fighting much larger monsters, and looks like he is enjoying every second of it. He comments that he can't even remember the last time he felt this fired up during a fight. He then charges forward, and lands a powerful punch, tearing a massive, crocodile-like monster clean into two pieces. Just as the old geezer finishes off the creature, he comments that it's a shame the monster wasn't even a proper match for him. He sounds disappointed since he didn't get the thrill he was expecting from the fight. He then sighs and remarks how the number of dungeons has dropped significantly compared to when he was younger. Meanwhile, after watching the big bad crocodile fall so easily, Xian can't help but feel a bit sorry for it. He struggles to believe how casually the old man killed it, as if it were nothing more than a small lizard. At the same time, he is reaching his limit, and he even lets out a tired laugh at his own situation. At the same time, he's hitting his absolute limit, and even lets out a tired laugh at the absurdity of his own situation. Suddenly, a powerful shockwave slams into him, forcing him down to his knees. As he retches from the impact, he barely manages to scramble back to his feet and asks Dieden what the hell just happened. Dieden calmly explains that the shockwave he just felt was actually the roar of the dungeon boss. He goes on to say that every dungeon has a final boss waiting at the end, and the one in this dungeon is the real reason he came all the way here. Just then, a massive drake descends from above, and the old-timer identifies it as a crimson drake. Hearing the term drake, Dieden quickly asks if that means it's a dragon. Dieden immediately shuts that down. The old man even comments that it's unfortunate he has to deal with a B-rank creature instead of facing a real dragon. Even so, this drake is clearly dangerous, as it's surrounded by a powerful force field. Dieden recalls hearing that B-rank and higher monsters possess unique traits similar to humans based on the Awakens ranking system. A red force field indicates a close combat tie, but when he notices the aura around this drake is blue, he shouts out that it means the creature is a magic type. Before they can react further, the drake unleashes a black flame attack straight at them. Xian is frozen in shock, unable to even close his mouth, and in fear, he completely loses control. At the same time, the old geezer leaps straight toward the source of the attack, and brings his massive sword down directly onto the drake's head. The drake quickly recovers, and swings back at the old-timer with its claws. Dieden moves to counter the strike using crayon, but in an unexpected turn, the geezer ends up caught within the drake's grip. The creature immediately takes advantage of this opening and prepares to unleash a fire breath at close range. However, Dieden reacts in time and forcefully shuts the drake's mouth, trapping the flames inside it. He asks the monster if it can feel the pain, and then tells it not to worry, because he is about to end it for good. Tightening his grip on his sword, Dieden pushes forward, and engages the drake once again, declaring that this will be the last day it stays alive. Meanwhile, Xian is running for his life. He finds himself stuck in the middle of this overwhelming fight where he can even stand still to defend himself properly. He quickly uses his ability, and forms a sand wall behind him in an attempt to block the incoming shockwaves. He shouts at the two of them to take their fight somewhere else, all while wondering how simple shockwaves can cause this much damage to him. On the other side, the old-timer is clearly enjoying himself. He shouts that this feels just like being at an amusement park. Just then, another shockwave rushes towards Xian, and this time it comes too suddenly for him to react. He realizes he's done for and gets thrown far away by the impact. He lands in a brutal way and ends up being flung toward the magma, leaving the poor boy frozen as he realizes he's about to die as a pathetic loser who couldn't even find himself a girl. The story then shifts to the old fart, who clearly doesn't care at all about what happens to our boy. Instead, he keeps bullying the Drake and calls it a disgrace to all boss monsters for fighting so pathetically. Pushed over the edge by the non-stop insults, the Drake charges up another breath attack. Seeing that, Deoden smiles, because he didn't expect the weakling to have something this fun hidden up its sleeve. The concentrated magic breath tears through the air, obliterating almost everything in its path and growing larger the farther it travels. After a while, the Crimson Drake finally stops, convinced the madman must have been turned into dust by now. But the moment it hears his voice asking if it's looking for someone, the boar creature realizes it's completely screwed. It lets out a pained roar and turns around just to see him casually squatting on its body. His sword is buried a full meter deep inside it, and he calmly reveals that he has been searching for one of its kind for a long time. After all, he needs a Crimson Drake heart for his crayon to grow. It's unfortunate, but the beast has no choice but to die for that purpose. With that, he drives the sword even deeper, letting magic seep into its body. The massive creature thrashes violently in pain as the blade pierces straight through it. After absorbing the Drake's heart, crayon begins to glow with a strong crimson aura. He looks at his sword with satisfaction, pleased that it has broken its limits once again. Right then, his weird little bonding moment with the sword gets interrupted by our boy, who asks why the hell he's talking to his weapon like a lunatic. The guy might be insane, but he's also insanely strong, considering he just soloed a Crimson Drake. Meanwhile, Deoden is surprised that the little twerp is still alive. Our boy lets him know that he was screwed and that he basically crawled back from the brink of death. The ground collapsed beneath him, and he was thrown down. He didn't just sit there waiting to die instead, he used his sand manipulation to create a cushion that softened the fall. That saved him from turning into human ketchup. Even he can believe how good he's gotten at cheating death every time things go south. He adds that constantly getting smacked around by the shockwaves of a certain madman has sharpened his reflexes a lot. Deoden is mildly impressed by that, but right now, there is something far more important to deal with. The old man suddenly grabs him by the shirt like he's handling a clueless toddler, telling him the dungeon is collapsing now that the boss is dead. They need to get out immediately, but our boy is confused about what that has to do with him getting picked up like a bag of groceries. The old fart bursts out laughing like he just heard the greatest joke of his life, not because it was actually funny, but because of what comes next. Without warning, he eats our boy into a tiny black crack that opens in front of them and casually yells, "See ya." Mid-flight, our boy fires off every curse he knows and calls him worse than that bastard Park Man-ho. A second later, he gets spat out on the other side as the black hole cracks open, and ragdolls him across the sand a few times. Spitting sand out of his mouth and completely disoriented, he wonders where the hell he ended up now. Deoden calmly explains that they are on the surface. When a dungeon boss is defeated, cracks to the outside open up as exits. Hearing that, he immediately starts complaining that they could have just walked out instead of him getting tossed like trash. The old man finally loses his patience and makes one thing clear. He admits that the kid's sand powers are actually quite useful, but in his current state, he's more useless than a blunt knife. Because of that, he gives him two choices: he can head south to New Soul City and keep living like the same dirt tier nobody he's always been, or he can choose the fun path under his guidance. He will go from a clueless moron to a stronger and faster moron. Deoden is thrown off by that and asks what exactly he means by following him, and more importantly, how long that would even take. The old warrior bluntly tells him he has no idea. It could take months, years, or even decades. Even he can't predict the future. Faced with a choice that could completely change his life, Deoden stands there unsure of what to do. The old man sums it up in the most brutal way possible: he can go back to his same boring life, or he can pick a path where he basically speedruns life with a 99% chance of dying. Our boy starts laughing like a maniac and questions if the old-timer has completely lost his mind. Deoden then goes on to fake him out, talking about how he's got a luxurious palace to return to along with a comfortable bed, and asks if the old man seriously expects him to give all of that up just to follow a smelly old geezer through burning deserts with no certainty, especially when the old man could drop dead at any moment because of his age. The old-timer responds with a simple yes, making it clear that this is exactly what he expects Deoden to do. Our boy puts on an act, and lets out a heavy sigh, showing how painful the decision is, yet he still agrees to follow him. He then spins a convincing story, explaining that whenever someone irritates him, he has to settle things on the spot, but admits he is currently too weak to take his revenge. He goes on to say that the old man is also on that revenge list, then praises how strong he is compared to anyone he has ever met before. Deoden adds that he doubts he will ever come across someone stronger than him again. As he keeps talking about how confident and positive he feels, the old-timer cuts him off and mocks him, asking if that means he is confident about dying early. Deoden denies it, and clenches his fists, declaring that he will become stronger than everyone else. The old geezer replies that with that kind of attitude, he is only heading towards an early ticket to the grave, then tells him to keep following. He continues calling him a dumbass while saying that they still have a long way to go. As the story moves forward, Deoden is soon drenched in sweat and barely managing to keep up with the old man's pace. He calls out to him, asking him to slow down and take a break since they have already been walking for 6 hours. He keeps shouting, but the old-timer completely ignores him and continues walking in silence. Gian shouts at himself, saying he is not some moody teenager, and wonders why he is dealing with all these sudden mood swings. The heat around him is unbearable, and he starts thinking about just how high the temperature must be. On top of that, the loose sand makes every step difficult, and he begins to worry that he might collapse from heat stroke at this rate. Just when he is about to give up, the old-timer finally turns his attention toward him, as if he had been waiting for this exact moment. He calls him a fool who cannot even make use of a small part of his own power. When Zan looks confused, the geezer reminds him that he is a sand manipulation user, yet he is struggling to even walk properly on sand, which should be the easiest thing for him. When Jian tries to defend himself by saying that he only awakened a few days ago and is still in class, Hyuden immediately gets annoyed. He tells the boy to stop talking nonsense, making it clear that he does not care about his class. He then questions him, asking if he really believes that people are born as class while he alone is the only one stuck at a disadvantage. The old-timer grabs the boy by his collar and asks him if he is planning to give up, just because he thinks he was not blessed. He keeps shouting until he loses his temper and puts the boy back down into the sand, telling him to figure out how to use his ability on his own. Hyuden tells him to use his brain and understand his own power since he should know it best if he wants to break past his limits and become stronger. Just when Jian starts thinking that the old man might actually be somewhat reasonable, Hyuden suddenly starts shouting again and threatens that he will be dead if he cannot figure it out. Jian starts over again and focuses on his ability. What he knows is that the range of sand he can control is only about 5 meters. He then analyzes the situation and realizes the sand is only ankle deep. If he can somehow make it as solid as a floor, he might be able to save more energy while moving. Our boy tries to condense the sand and make it solid, and he finally succeeds. Walking in the scorching desert suddenly feels like a breeze for him. However, he soon realizes just how much mana is being drained from him, and he understands that he may not be able to keep this up for long. Jian then shifts to plan B and tries concentrating mana into his legs instead. This also works surprisingly well. Seeing him full of energy and trying again and again, the old-timer secretly smiles, remembering his own days when he was also an energetic youngster. Even though Jian keeps saying that he is just in class, he even remains confident that his control over mana and his potential should be at least level he or do. The old man sees clear potential in the boy. Just then, Jian discovers something new and starts making a fuss about it. He runs up to the old-timer while shouting that he is simply controlling the sand touching his feet, and that walking has become much easier now. As he starts getting cocky, and even shows the old man his middle finger while challenging him to do the same, the old-timer punches him on the head. He tells the boy to stop wasting time on useless things unless he wants to drop dead. Jian falls down immediately and loses consciousness. By the time he wakes up, he finds his dirty face pressed against the sandy floor in the dark. While munching on some beef jerky, the geezer says he is glad the kid finally woke up, as it was a real pain carrying him all the way here. As our boy tries to sit up and complains that his whole body is wrecked with injuries, the old fart tosses him a wad of jerky. Then, he tells the kid to carefully listen to a story from his younger days. According to him, those were the good times back when being weak would not get you killed. In fact, protecting the weak was considered the noble duty of those with power. But that world is long gone now, and he clearly misses it. Story time ends quickly, and the guru geezer tells him to get up already if he isn't a fan of dying. Our protagonist quietly listens to his teacher instead of talking back. To his surprise, the old man throws him another piece of jerky. The story from Lamego makes him realize that the geezer actually has a lot of wisdom. Hyuden looks like a dried-up relic, but he carries decades, or maybe even centuries, of experience. While watching him eat, he notices something interesting. Even with those ancient, worn-out teeth, the old man has no trouble with the jerky. Just by observing, he figures out the trick. Instead of chewing it straight, you soften it with saliva first before biting into it. It is the right way to eat jerky in an arid, dry dessert like this. It feels like the old man is not just feeding him, but slowly teaching him how to survive on his own, like showing a man how to fish instead of just handing him food. After that, the two head out again under the cover of the night sky. Along the way, he keeps nagging his teacher for another piece of jerky, but the old fart tells him to zip it. Sometime later, the cold starts hitting him hard. He begins sneezing non-stop, his whole body shaking like a vibrating machine in the freezing desert night. Meanwhile, the old man stretches out like he is relaxing on some beach in Hawaii, completely unfazed. At the same time, Jian still cannot wrap his head around why this lunatic talks to his sword all the time. Thirst kicks in and he asks for some water, but Hyuden ignores him completely, and drinks every last drop for himself. Washing that seriously pisses him off, especially since the greedy guru does not even bother sharing. Even then, he realizes he does not have enough clothing on him. Unlike the old man, he cannot wring out dew from loose fabric to drink. Still, he crouches down and starts licking the tiny drops of dew off his own body like a desperate stray puppy. He will do anything to reach his master's level. Seeing that, the old man calls him a dotard, but he argues he is not a dotard, he is a proud moron. Ignoring his nonsense, the old man tells him to shut up and focus on sensing his surroundings. Clueless as usual, he quiets down and tries to listen. After a while, he begins to pick up faint vibrations all around him. Slowly, he realizes they are coming from multiple directions. Before he can even blink, he sees hundreds of glowing eyes surrounding them. They are vicious beasts ready to tear apart anything they can get their jaws on. Horned hyenas are usually active at night, but unluckily, they got caught out at dawn. As the beasts bare their fangs and prepare to rip him to pieces, the old man asks if he's got this, or if he needs daddy's help. It seems the crazy rubbed off on him too, because he laughs and replies he does not need any help from a dusty old man. Manipulating the scent around him, he prepares for a fight to the death with the stray animals. First, he forms a sand bullet and fires it straight through one of the hyenas. Then, he raises massive spikes of hardened sand, creating a deadly zone that kills anything entering his range. But as the fight drags on, exhaustion starts catching up to him. He heals in frustration, feeling like he's stuck in some endless zombies mode in COD. Pain burns through his chest, and he nearly collapses, realizing he might die from mana exhaustion before the beasts even finish him off. That makes one thing clear: raw power alone is not enough. He needs a smarter way to fight. Summoning another sand bullet in his hand, he starts thinking deeply about how to use his energy more efficiently. But his train of thought gets cut short when a hyena lunges in and sinks its teeth deep into his arm. Somehow, he manages to shake it off, but the damage is brutal. His arm is torn up with holes like SpongeBob. Even then, that injury sparks a eureka moment. Those holes teach him the most efficient way to use his sand manipulation. He stands still, quietly planning his next move while the pack charges at him, hungry and ready to tear him apart. Right before they reach him, he unleashes his brand new technique. Hundreds of insanely thin but sharp sand spikes erupt from the ground all at once. They pierce through every single beast, turning the entire pack into skewered hyena kebabs. The villain bursts into laughter, just like his master. Watching his enemies drop from a single, clean strike feels far more satisfying than blowing their heads apart. Wasting mana in a fight is the fastest way to speedrun death. Meanwhile, his precise spike traps, which punch clean holes through targets, are peak efficiency. Compared to him, the old geezer fights way slower, taking enemies head on one by one. The hyenas latch onto his arms and bite in, yet the lunatic just laughs like they were tickling him. After having his fun, a violent glint flashes in his eyes as he finally gets serious. The moment Jian sees that insane expression, he immediately understands what's coming. He braces himself, already dreading having to deal with this madness again. With a nasty grin, the old man commands Crayon to annihilate his enemies. In an instant, explosive power erupts, sending out shockwaves that blast away sand and beasts alike. Our boy barely manages to shield himself with a wall of sand while the hyenas are launched like cannonballs into the distance. When everything finally settles, he just stands there in disbelief. The epicenter of the blast and the trail of destruction stretching ahead leave him completely speechless. It makes him question if Dieten is even human, because no normal person could pull that off without using some kind of skill. At the same time, he realizes that getting arrogant around a monster like this is a fast way to die. Meanwhile, Dieten starts coughing hard, choking on the dust he kicked up himself. Taking advantage of that moment, the alpha of the horned hyenas lunges in and pierces him with its lightning-charged horn. Caught off guard, the old man looks down in mild confusion, wondering why the beast has some kind of magic field around it. He clearly underestimated it, since this one is at least B rank. Seeing him in a life-threatening situation, Ian panics and shouts for him to watch out. Turns out, the worry was completely pointless. Dieten casually grabs the hyena's horn like it belongs to him, barely reacting to the crackling lightning surging through it. Our protagonist hits an error 404 screen, unable to process what kind of quantum physics he is witnessing. Even the alpha gets weirded out, and backs away when she sees the old freak enjoying her lightning like it's a soothing massage for his sore muscles. After his massage, he lets the poor sucker know it's the end of the line. He jumps onto the alpha and drives his sword deep into her body, spraying blood all across the battlefield. Watching that, Zium realizes he was an idiot for ever worrying about this man. After the fight, the two begin harvesting useful materials from the horned hyenas. Wearing the alpha's hide, our boy asks Dieten when they are finally leaving. He is surprised to see the old man even taking the horns, who explains they are valuable materials for crafting lightning-based weapons. Out of nowhere, the old man tosses him a dagger, handing him a weapon to hunt with. He makes it clear that from now on, the kid has to find his own food, no more freebies. Since horned hyena meat is mostly poisonous, one wrong bite would kill him. Only the muscle from the flank is safe to eat. As Dieten casually cuts out meat for himself, he notices the kid just staring, and snaps at him to stop talking. If he wants to survive, he'd better get moving and secure his own food before sunrise. With that, our boy starts harvesting meat on his own until the sun finally rises. He already looks more experienced compared to before. Even though he still lacks a proper water source, he has plenty of meat stored in his satchel. On top of that, His sandwalking skill makes it a breeze to move during the day. Getting a bit cocky, he taunts the old man, asking if he's struggling to walk, and feeling jealous of his neat little ability. This time, he actually dodges the man's punch and sticks his tongue out like an annoying brat. But the second strike, delivered with cram, knocks some sense into his skull. While he spits out sand, Theoden bluntly tells him that his back hurts like hell, and a cheap walking trick doesn't make him special. Theoden sulks, thinking he was just messing around. He was already thirsty, and now his mouth is filled with dry sand. And he notices something is off. His mouth isn't actually that dry anymore. The air feels a little moist. For a second, he wonders if he's hallucinating, but the look on Theoden's face confirms it's real. On the other side of the sand dune in front of them lies something every desert traveler dreams of finding, a desert oasis. Walking up the dune, Theoden starts shouting in excitement as he finally gets to see a lake in real life. He ignores all precautions and slides down the sand, desperate for that refreshing, hydrating water. The old geezer clicks his tongue in disappointment but doesn't stop him. Our hero runs straight to the edge and dunks his head into the water, letting his dry skin take in the much-needed moisture. He closes his eyes and lets his thoughts drift away. Ever since arriving here, he's been stuck in the burning heat of the desert, and this is the first time he's allowed his body to cool down. He suddenly snaps out of his thoughts as he notices a bright light deep inside the depths of the lake. Theoden begins to feel drowsy as he keeps staring at it, slowly running out of air. All of a sudden, Theoden calls out his name and rushes down the slope at full speed. However, our hero stays frozen, unaware that a massive sea monster is slowly approaching him. At the last moment, the old man manages to pull him out just before he gets turned into fish feed. Throwing Theoden onto the ground, Theoden jumps up in the air and faces the fish monster head-on. With one clean strike of his sword, he takes down the huge creature instantly. Meanwhile, our boy watches everything happen but gets distracted by the rainbow forming over the oasis. The old geezer drags the giant fish out of the water and explains that it is a sand angler. The fish uses the light on its head to hypnotize prey before devouring them. His expression suddenly turns serious, and he slams the absolute disobedience out of our boy. The old man then starts scolding him for forgetting everything he was taught and becoming too careless. Theoden continues, saying that reckless fools like him are always the first to die in the harsh, unforgiving environment of the desert. Theoden can only say yes in response, and the old man lets out a sigh. Seeing that his student is listening for once, he drops the topic, and instead tells him to start skinning the monster. The sand angler is a C-rank magic beast, and its belly skin is the perfect material for making a robe. Our boy gets confused and asks if the old geezer really needs a robe, which nearly makes the man lose it. Having reached his limit for stupidity for the day, he starts roasting the boy and calls him dumber than a brainless starfish. Our hero comically starts bleeding out of his ears again, and quickly apologizes with a nervous smile. The old man continues, saying that even though the fish has mutated a lot, it still resembles the species that once lived on Earth. He tells Theoden to look at it carefully, since this is his first. He tells Theoden to take a good look, since this is his first time seeing a real fish in the flesh. Our boy quickly concludes that fish are actually terrifying, and gets straight to skinning. Seeing how badly he's hacking away, Theoden tells him to stop treating the fish like he's giving his grandma a massage. Our hero tells him to mind his own business, but refocuses on the task. He soon realizes that the skin is way too tough to cut with a normal knife. Theoden then channels mana into his blade, sharpening it until it can slice through the hide with ease. He uses the knife to scrape off the scales and crafts them into small needles. For thread, he decides to use the tendons connecting the meat to the bones. Despite all his Oscar-worthy ideas, the final result is a complete mess of a roe. Lounging against the dead fish, the old man roasts him for wasting such a prime catch on something so useless. But our boy doesn't quit. He decides to give it another shot since he has plenty of materials left. A few hours later, he finally succeeds and holds up a finished robe that actually looks decent. Theoden gets a little carried away, bragging that he could probably sell these for a profit or even open his own tailor's shop. The old man calls his name, causing him to snap back instantly. He shouts that he's definitely not handing over the robe. However, Theoden instead tells him to stop messing around, while holding up a massive, sack-like organ still dripping with blood. He tells our boy to start eating this gallbladder, claiming it's a very rare and powerful medicine. Jian tries to argue, but the old man confirms his worst fear: he'll be killed if he refuses. He then drops the heavy organ into our boy's hands, complaining that his own arms are getting tired. Looking at the disgusting mass in front of him, our hero hesitates for a moment, but then starts eating like a starving man. Even though it tastes more bitter than orange juice right after toothpaste, he keeps gobbling it down, not wanting to get beaten to death. Strangely, after a few bites, he feels like his hunger still isn't satisfied, and continues eating more and more. Just as he finishes it, the old man warns him that it's now time for him to burn. That catches Jian off guard, as he wonders what the old geezer is talking about. Right after that, he feels his throat tighten as he starts choking from the inside. It feels like a Chernobyl reactor is melting down in his gut. His whole body goes out of control as intense heat spreads everywhere. He begins screaming in unbearable pain, while the old man just tells him to stop acting like a child. He then starts monologuing, saying that everything in life is like this oasis, that everything will disappear as if it never existed. He explains that the sand angels are reborn to keep the cycle balanced. Before he can continue, our boy cuts him off and tells him to quit it with the sappy, emotional stories and actually help him. Even while watching the kid writhe on the ground like an earthworm that just touched salt, he does nothing, and simply goes to sleep. The next day, Ian finally opens his eyes and sees the old man staring down at him with an evil smile that nearly scares the soul right out of his body. He shouts at the old man for nearly giving him a heart attack. They exchange a few more nice words before the old man asks how he's feeling now. Our boy then realizes that something in his body has changed. He feels much lighter, his muscles feel stronger, and the mana inside him feels close to overflowing. Testing his new and improved powers, he asks what happened, since it feels like he's taken some super soldier serum. The old man explains that it's all thanks to the fish's gallbladder. He says the organ works like a cheat item for surviving the desert, making a person much stronger. It's something incredibly valuable, which makes our boy feel uneasy about being allowed to use it. Deodon brushes it off, saying he only did it because the kid was too weak, and he didn't want to be slowed down by him. Ian argues that he's useful sometimes, but the old man tells him to shut up and start eating, since they aren't leaving until the fish is fully consumed. 4 days later, they finally manage to reduce the sand angler down to nothing but clean bones. The old man then says it's time to move again. Ian smiles and puts on his new cloak as they continue their journey. A few days later, strong, dusty winds blow toward them, marking the start of a sandstorm. Thanks to his new strength, our boy isn't affected much and is surprised that the old man has enough stamina to keep going without slowing down. Deodon hasn't spoken for days, which makes Ian wonder if the old man is going through some kind of male menopause. They've been walking for 2 weeks now, which makes him question whether the old man even knows where they were going. Just then, a giant ant monster appears behind Jian, but he quickly responds with a sand beam attack. He wonders how much farther they have to go, but then notices the ant monster is still alive. That gets his attention, as he admits the creature is tougher than expected. He had hoped to pass through without trouble, but things don't go his way. Using his sand abilities, he senses more ants approaching, and decides to face them head-on. Driving his hand into the sand, he forces the ants to rise to the surface as they begin to surround him. Slightly bored out of his mind from wiping out swaths of ants, Ian continued blasting them with sand. His technique had noticeably improved in a short amount of time. Come to think of it, days with sandstorms were actually pretty great for his power. There was a practically infinite supply of ammunition everywhere he looked. The geezer's pace was unforgiving, and he never slowed down, leaving the dumbass to take care of the trailing nuisance. Ian complained about the lack of a single shred of loyalty. No wonder the geezer was still alone in his old age. While he was worrying whether Deodon could hear his trash talk, Ian picked up something troublesome within his 10-meter detection range. He was always on alert, never dropping his guard. It allowed him to react instantly whenever a magic beast appeared. But this time was different. What he sensed at this moment sent a tingle down his spine. What he detected wasn't just a beast, it was terror incarnate. What followed was a stampede of countless ants spewing out of the ground. The army of pests came out of nowhere. He turned to the old man for some help, acknowledging that he was out of his depth, but Deodon just looked at him and sat his old ass down to watch. If he had popcorn, he would have been snacking. Ian knew that no help was coming. Besides, he can keep crying to the geezer every time things get tough. There was no way that old fart didn't sense what was coming. This was a quest, a test of sorts. Whether there are 1,000 or 10,000 of these critters, bugs are just bugs. So, he formed a sphere of rolling sand, and trapped the entire army. It was a struggle to keep it together, made even harder when another batch cropped up to interrupt his flow. Ian's confidence crumbled as he was dragged away like a bag of trash. He resorted to challenging the ants to fight him one-on-one like a man instead of ganging up. His provocation was useless. They continued to swarm him like he was the sweetest treat in the dessert. Fortunately, he found an opening to harden some sand beneath his feet, using it as a platform for flight. Even with the increased verticality, the ants found a way to reach him by forming a dam in Thil. He desperately flew up to higher ground for a better view of the situation. Ian thought he'd be safe up there, but he was sorely mistaken. Who would have thought that giant ants could form an even more gigantic Thil by linking themselves together? He nearly shat himself when his sand flyer was stopped in its tracks. The screeching the bugs produced was haunting as they held onto Jian's foot like their lives depended on it. He was helplessly tugged along by his ankle and slammed into the sand without mercy. It took Jian a minute to get back up, puffing and puffing for air as he puked blood. When he looked up, the old man was still watching with a disinterested look. That indifference gave him enough fuel to keep going. He wanted to prove that he could survive this ordeal. For the first time since the fight started, he hadn't showed a positive reaction. He liked the kid's spirit, even though he still acted. For the first time since the fight started, he hadn't showed a hint of a positive reaction. He liked the kid's spirit, even if he was still a total dumbass. In a world turned to shit, buried under nothing but sand, Ian's ability is nothing short of a blessing. After all, he could have used and honed that power to live a life of luxury, but that would have been the end of the road to shallow existence. Those narrow-minded idiots are obsessed with illusions. They don't even know why the world went to hell in the first place. An awakened is meant to master, utilize, and evolve their skills to the absolute limit. This power isn't meant for some factory-made, cookie-cutter soldier. Diodin might be one of the very few who still remember. Most have forgotten the tragedy that shook the very foundations of the world a century ago. Back then, Diodin was beyond useless. He had lost count of how many people died in vain right before his eyes. His comrades, neighbors, and even his family were all victims of the catastrophe. What hurt the most was the loss of his daughter. He had never felt so powerless. He lost everyone important to him, while he froze up like a total fucking idiot. This kid, Xian, is different. He never faltered, even when the odds were unfairly stacked against him. He might have the potential to become anything he wants, as long as he's insane enough to throw himself into the fray, crossing the line between life and death. By tiptoeing that line, one will undoubtedly grow at an astonishing pace. Looking like he'd lost any semblance of sanity, Xian laughed in the face of the Ant army. In the heat of battle, he devised a skill that created an ultra-high pressure, compressed sand missile. It was a simple and crude invention, but its destructiveness was the real deal. Each missile he launched was packed with compressed gravity, wind, and every bit of energy he could muster. It was greater than the sum of its parts, a harmonious energy that increased the power tenfold. The ants failed to kill him before he adapted, so now it was their turn to get massacred. Diodin smirked at the punk, who was getting all hyped up over his little invention. By the time Xian was done bombarding the bugs, the surrounding terrain had been drastically altered, cratered in multiple spots. He was very pleased with himself. This was a cause for celebration. Xian was so excited to brag about his to the old geezer that he didn't notice the threat coming from his flank. The biggest ant in the colony had surfaced, and caught him in a tight mandible grip, creeping up on him without making a single sound. There was no way these critters had the capacity to use a high-level stealth skill. The foreign feeling he sensed inside his body made his predicament make sense. He was poisoned. He had been steadily losing control of his mana. The poison must be blocking his newly established mana points. Restricted and powerless, all he could do was bark curses. The giant and was immune to his foul mouth. He was just another piece of prey that had to be hunted. When Xian regained consciousness, he found himself deep in an underground tunnel, surrounded by his sworn enemies. It was an ant nest, and upon sensing that food had arrived, the colony's larvae skittered toward the paralyzed human. Their ear-piercing screech and alien look were off-putting, to say the least. Once they were sure he wasn't a threat, the larvae crawled all over his body, looking to get a taste of his flesh. These suckers were strong enough to pierce through skin and bite through everything beneath it. Despite being the main dish at this disgusting feast, Xian couldn't move a muscle. At this rate, he'd be eaten alive. Slowly, as his vision dimmed, he saw his life flashing before his eyes. What he witnessed on that depressing trip down memory lane ignited something deep within him. Xian regained some of his willpower, fighting through the poison to crush one of the parasites trying to snack on him. Seeing the food move alerted the ants. Watching the feast, he laughed at himself for daring to close his eyes like a coward. In the first place, life is just so unfair. The flashback of his entire life didn't show a single good memory. How could he accept dying like such a loser? The near-death experience must have pushed him past his limits, increasing the markings on his forearm. Accessing the sand beneath his feet, he one-shot at every ugly larva in his vicinity with a spiky explosion. The ant army panicked. Their captive was supposed to be free food, but now Xian was back on his feet, with dozens of compressed missiles floating all around him. He looked down at his forearm, and noticed his rank had increased. The rank up came with poison cleansing, stamina restoration, and an overall increase in his overflowing mana capacity. The second sandy line on his mark was the culmination of his non-stop hard work over the past few days with the geezer. From raw power to mana capacity, everything was on an entirely different level compared to his frank capabilities. Yet, even with all those sand missiles at his disposal, he still couldn't land a single scratch on the Ant Queen. The giant bug retaliated, attacking him with her many fast-moving limbs. That simple but effective strike smashed through rock and pulverized it into sand. Xian continued his sandy barrage, but the Queen's carapace was simply impenetrable. At this point, he would have settled for even a tiny dent in that black exoskeleton. The Queen's defense was insane. After a few more wasted tries, he accepted that sand missiles weren't going to cut it, no matter how compressed and destructive they were. In that case, he'd just have to rethink his whole strategy. There had to be a way to break unbreakable armor. Smashing and piercing were out of the question. Maybe he could try to rip the tough carapace right off. To do just that, Xian manipulated every grain of sand he could control to completely blanket the Queen's entire body. He pictured a tight, ripping motion around the hard shell in his mind, twisting and peeling the whole thing off the flesh. It effectively made the Queen screech in pain. In retaliation for his brutal attempt at undressing a queen, she started coalescing pure mana in her mandibles. She didn't fight against the rip, but instead ready to fearsome ranged counterattack. Xian wasn't the only crazy bastard in this ant nest. The mana gathered produced ultra-high frequency waves that made his ears bleed at this rate. His brain might just explode from the pressure. The straightforward fight from earlier had turned into a battle of grit and pain tolerance. Ian thought his crazy plan to undress the queen was a good play. Who would have thought that the colony's leader had something up her many sleeves? Bleeding through his ears and eyeballs, the kid welcomed the challenge. Even though there was a good chance he'd die, it was truly simple: whoever dies first is the loser. This guy was a true hater. He would readily die with his enemy if it meant there was a chance of winning. The agonizing standstill came to a close when Jin felt his consciousness shatter. Something snapped inside his body, severing its connection with his mind. He might have reached his absolute limit, and there his useless body simply couldn't keep up with the challenge. He was tired of being so pathetic and weak. The geezer must have heard his innermost thoughts, because he was already picking Jian up from the dirt with that easygoing smile. Diadem reprimanded the fool for almost dying. Miraculously, Ian re-established the connection between his body and mind. He even joked that he'd let the geezer have the last hit. There was no need for any more meddling, though. That C-rank wolf and queen was far stronger than Jian, yet he didn't give up, and fought until the very end, earning the right to live by being persistent and creative. Diadem was basically showering him with praise for the first time since they teamed up. It was a shame Zayn's eardrums were completely ruptured. He couldn't hear a word the man just said. Acknowledging his defective eardrums, the old man carried his limp body close to the corpse of the wolf and queen. They reached a small clearing where a glimmering sphere had been neatly placed. Ian asked the geezer what was up, and Diadem started scribbling on the walls. He explained that the sphere was the queen's egg. It was medicine, strawberry flavored too. The kid was confused by the wall scribblings, the kid was totally lost looking at those wall scribblings, but it sounded like he was being pressured into eating some mystery material again. Just in case history decided to repeat itself, Ian asked if swallowing this crap was going to hurt as much as that sand angler's gallbladder. Diadem stepped up, and admitted that chowing down on the egg would most likely lead to death, but Jian didn't catch a word of that thanks to his severe ear injury. Ultimately, he chose to trust the old man's call, and inched his mouth toward the glittering egg. He's just a street rat from Neo Seoul. The kid doesn't even know what a strawberry tastes like. But if they have the same flavor as this and egg, then strawberries must be freaking delicious. Ian jokingly asked for seconds, but his face went pale the second he felt something unusual after ingesting it. Spikes of blood erupted all over his body, and the bleeding that had finally ceased kicked right back into high gear. He was undergoing a process known as organ inversion. It literally means the twisting and turning of the intestines and all neighboring body parts. Normally, a queen ant's egg is used as a lethal poison. Even a tiny amount of that nasty stuff would forcibly invert a human's internal organs. The consumer's organs are pierced and twisted as if they were being stirred by a thorny stick. Most people would undoubtedly die from the sheer agony and shock of organ inversion. As the debilitating pain clouded his mind, Ian cursed the old man for putting him through hell time and time again. But Diadem was just trying to increase his chances of survival in this crazy world by forcing him to experience a level of pain that would break even the strongest wills. The next phase of organ inversion involved puking up gallons upon gallons of blood, looking like a leaky faucet in a horror movie. At this point, it was a miracle that Jian was even still standing. Slowly succumbing to blood loss and going into shock, he started to reminisce about the past few days of adventure. He thought he'd finally found someone to trust, but maybe Diadem was just a sadistic old fart after all. Maybe he was just another replaceable idiot to Grams. Slipping, and falling into his own pool of blood, Ian writhed on the ground while Diadem just watched. While the kid was convulsing down there, the old man rummaged through the queen ant's corpse. It didn't take him long to find what he was looking for. Yanking a piece of shiny material from the queen's lower half, he chuckled. As expected, a beast's mana stone is on a completely different level from the usual stuff. This one was nothing short of a jackpot. He hadn't deemed the antibodies useful for the future, so he stashed them in a pocket dimension. His recent actions even earned him the ire of his sword, Crayon. He admitted that he might have pushed the kid too far this time, but there was no other way. If he's weak, he dies. That's just how fate works. Besides, Crayon knows as well as the geezer that they don't have much time left. By sunrise, Ian continued to beat unbeatable odds by waking up after napping like a blood-drained infant. The first thing he saw was that annoying smile plastered on a wrinkly face. Instinctively, the disrespectful brat attacked his mentor. He had firmly warned him against kicking up dust while he was still being nice, but Zayn wasn't listening. He had a much more potent batch of sand missiles loaded and locked onto the geezer's position. He hadn't tried to warn him against acting out, but the kid actually went through with the attack. You can't really blame him either. He was moving on pure autopilot. Ian was acting under the impression that the old man had tried to kill him on purpose. His sand buried Diadem deep, and he was moving and speaking like a vengeful spirit with a grudge to settle. In addition to the waves of sand, he also accessed the spiky stalactites hanging from the walls of the ant colony. He used the fine grains to cut off one of the giant spikes, bringing it crashing down on the old man. That series of attacks completely gassed him out. The combo was impressive, but so was the mana and stamina cost. While he was going on and on about the attempt on his life, the old man simply sighed and seriously questioned his intelligence. Sure, the queen's egg might have some toxins that could rot a brain, but that's still no excuse for not using what's left in that thick skull of his. Ian was astounded that the geezer just stood his ground and took the full combo without a single scratch. If Diadon really wanted to kill him, he'd be dead from a single flick to the forehead. Why would someone as powerful as the old man go through the trouble of poisoning a wormy bastard? The clarification was a little insulting, but Jian had to admit it made a ton of sense. The geezer elaborated that the queen's egg is a lethal poison that twists and stabs at the consumer's organs, but if you survive that, it also flushes out every toxin and impurity from every corner of your body. Depending on how it's used, it can be a deadly poison or a heavenly medicine. After all the internal filth was expelled from Xian's body, mana would quickly fill up the empty spaces where impurities used to reside. He must have felt the change when he attempted to kill Diadon for real. By the old man's estimate, the kid's mana must have increased at least 3 or 4-fold. After getting the proper explanation, Ian profusely apologized, jumped into the geezer's arms, and excused his actions as those of someone who wasn't in the right state of mind. Diadon didn't make a big deal of the fuss, he was just grossed out by being hugged by a snotty dude. Thankfully, that egg also healed his injuries, his eardrums were intact again, and he could hear insults once more. Ian refused to let go despite the geezer's protests. Internally, Diadon was conversing with his blade about the risk they took in letting the kid eat the egg. In truth, Ian was only partly faking his tearful apology to avoid angering his eccentric mentor any further. Still, the geezer thought the risk was worth it. If the kid doesn't get strong fast enough, he'll be nothing but dead weight. Sometimes reckless gambles pay off, like today. Diadon picked up Ian like he weighed nothing. It was time to get out of this gloomy colony. Ian was a bit confused as to why the old man grabbed him again, when he was now perfectly capable of walking on his own. Well, since they had wasted enough time underground, there was only one quick way to resurface. When the old man pointed at the spiky ceiling of the colony, Ian knew he was going to get hurt whether he approved or not. A few moments later, the peaceful surface of the sandy desert was interrupted by their sudden emergence from below. Diadon loved taking charge and going fast, but Jayan was not a big fan of his reckless pace. Why can't they just travel like normal people for once? The geezer would have been open to the idea of leisurely traversing the barren land if the dumbass hadn't slept for 4 straight days. Diadon felt bad for whoever would marry this pathetic kid in the future. The joking and teasing paused when the geezer saw something in the distance. Dian alleged that nothing could surprise him anymore but quickly shut his trap as soon as he followed the old man's line of sight. Up ahead was a giant land tortoise the size of a small island. The beast was nearly 30 kilometers away from their position, but its sheer size made it very visible. Diadon explained that the tortoise was known as the mobile fortress Arcanon, a major pain in the ass that never gave him a moment's peace. The tortoise itself is classified as a B-rank magic beast, but its defenses far surpass many A-rank monsters. After taming the beast, they modified the shell and used it as transport a mobile fortress. Diadon implored the dumbass to take a good look at the Arcanon. Seeing such a thing for the first time would undoubtedly make anyone ponder how vast the world truly is. There are true monsters out there capable of taming and riding a beast like that. When the mobile fortress passed them by, both the old man and the dumbass were just the size of dirt stuck between the Arcanon's toes. When the tortoise stopped moving forward, someone jumped from the shell to the ground. Based on how familiar this jumper was to the geezer, it sounded like these two old bags of bones had known each other for a long time.